Race is a lie, a ghost in the machine, a veil over the eye. Race is a lie, a script for the managed, a reason to die. It's the dementia, the spirit, it's the glitch in the code. It's the heavy, heavy baggage on a sovereign road. Dissolve the construct. Yeah, yeah. It started as a lie, a whisper in the dark, designed to keep the brothers from finding the spark. Father is a soul whose sovereign operating system was no longer whole. It didn't pull that trigger from his fully human place. The construct had the wheel, the construct ran the race. So stop fighting your father and dismantle the disease. If a lawyer wrote the code, the architect holds the keys. What was manufactured can be dismantled.
Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Trinity podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jess Esther and Mike Murphy. How you all both doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great. Gracias.
You know, one of the ways we like to get things started, always set the context of how we're feeling and putting that same energy, intensity into our podcast, and hopefully for the listeners that's listening to us today. We start by setting the check-in. So with that being said, Jess, I'll ask you, what's your spiritual energy number between 0 being life sucks and 10 being life is awesome?
10. Life is awesome.
Absolutely.
Being a cheerleader for a moment. But yeah, I did just get in from grounding, so I really feel a 10.
Absolutely. How about yourself, Mike?
I would say it's my life is a 10. My energy today is like an 8. I've been working really, really hard and just going a little slower today. But I'm very grateful for everything that's happening in my life right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So am I. I think that's one of the things that we're common about, or that we have in common, and more importantly, in alignment, is that we live in a state of gratitude. And I know that coming to Mountains of Hope helped me get into the place of teaching me that gratitude is actually a state and not just a feeling. Because prior to that, I always thought it was just a feeling that can come and go. But I realize it's now it's a state that can be sustained through collective action, through intentional actions. And in that space, today's topic is going to be us talking about how we've been able to, in our journey to be fully human, where at difficult times in our lives, right, either in the middle of the wreckage or definitely in the middle of a storm, we've chosen to still lean into service by being servant leaders and exercising what I consider to be 3 tiers of capitalism. I mean, 3 tiers of capital, which is social capital, generative capital, and financial capital, and using those to still help someone else, a deserving soul in need. So I kind of want to talk about what the experience was. How did you choose to do that in that moment? And then more importantly, how did it feel as a result of choosing that? Was it ever a regret in choosing that? So how about we start with you, Mike?
Okay.
You have experience you have in your mind that fits that model?
Yeah. Give me the short version of that question real quick again, because I lost my train of thought because I was thinking of something else.
Okay, well, I'll ask this way more specifically. I know that you've allowed several people to come to Mountains of Hope who were at that time dealing with cancer, having health issues, and you have a fee that you normally charge, but you allowed them to come in for less, which was a financial decrease to you, but you still held space for them, showed them love. And I'm just curious, how did you choose to do that in that moment? And then how did it feel after you making that choice to do that?
You know, I bought into this concept long time ago in my 20s, which I called at that time the law of reciprocity. And I really believe that you can't outgive God. And the more that you give, the more that you receive. And it's not one-to-one. Now, I don't give to receive. I give because that's what my heart wants to do. And that's how my mother somewhat programmed me. And then I bought into this law of reciprocity. And in the Bible, it says, you know, you give and you shall get and you shall receive. But it's not 1x, it's 10x, it's 20x, it's 50x, you know. pushed down, flowing over. So I really bought into that a long time ago. So I've always been generous with my money and helping others. When I didn't have money, I remember once when we had 4 little children living in a small little house, we took in a couple of homeless guys for a year or two. And so I've always had that in my spirit and in my heart. And it's just who I am, and it fulfills me. And as a result, I really believe that one of the reasons I have money is that I'm generous with my money. Money to me is energy, it's vibrations, frequencies, currency, right? And
Mhm.
so if you hoard it, it's what's the point of that? And so I let it go, and it keeps coming back. I let it go with good intentions for good purposes to help people that are struggling. I really don't think we talked about this I think last week, but I really don't see racism as color. It's more economic racism, and that's globally. You take the white people in West Virginia and the black people in Oakland or Chicago. I mean, it's all economics. I mean, there's African American people in the San Francisco Bay Area with a lot of money that don't experience that, right? So I think it's the economics, and I just think that we need a fairer system.
Mhm.
Why should people suffer physically just because they don't have money? So that's why I do it.
Yeah.
And you said something that was important there. I believe at the end of the day, that's my argument. What I advocate is that it's definitely classism at the end of the day. I think racism is put out there so to divide us. So while we're fighting over that and seeing each other as enemies, that class and elite continue to take more for themselves. And that's why the theme song "Race is a Lie" is there. Because if you believe in race, and I see you as another, I see you as my enemy, and we argue with each other while someone else is taking billions and billions of dollars from our collective taxpayers' money, and then people are not getting the programs they need because money's being used in that manner.
Mhm.
Right.
And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about how he invests in stocks, and he was saying how he's successfully able to invest just $50,000 a week. He can generate $8,000 off that investment by either doing what's called betting a stock goes down in value or betting a stock goes up in value, and he wins both sides. And do what's called put and calls. And the thing they have, what people don't realize, the system is rigged that several companies like Amazon, Tesla, IBM, Microsoft, some of the big, huge companies, they're never going to fail because people make money when they go low, people buy their stocks, and when they go high, people sell their stocks. So they're never going to actually reach a deficit because they're sustained in that space, and people make money off that. And that to me is why that's always going to be in a position of continue to have more billions and billions of dollars, because then they teach people, even when you get into stocks, this is how you invest in stocks. So even folks who are not investing, they learn they're going to follow suit, and they continue to have those stocks always trading at $1,500 or $2,000 a share and growing while the economy suffers. And so, Jess, I want to ask you this question as well, like I asked Mike, but I want to add this spin to it because what I see you doing is something really unique in the context that you've actually created a fund. We call it the Deserving Soul Fund to help what we feel that people who are deserving souls. And I just want to set the context, the definition of deserving soul for those who are listening. A deserving soul is someone who may have a health crisis, financial challenge, emotional crisis, but in that moment that they're going through that crisis storm, they're choosing to be a servant leader and want to help others. So they're not thinking about themselves. So helping them impacts others in that manner. And Jess, you're creating the Deserving Soul Fund for folks in that space who are doing that, namely Rachel that we've been building with God is Tears. I'm really curious because I know that over the last 6 months, you've gone through quite a bit of your grief, your wreckage, your thunderstorm. And here you are as we get through that particular storm. You're saying, I want to do this to help others. How do you keep that space to have that gratitude moment like that? Then more importantly, how does it impact your life as you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like what really impacted that was my father's departure last Christmas, and his decision at at that point allowed me to be at his bedside for a day. And I've been a death doula and I've witnessed many transitions, but this transition was unique. It was sudden and it was shocking. And it was on a holiday and it was unexpected. So there was just a lot that was different about it. It was the next day after he transitioned that I discovered that that was a premeditated act and that he had shifted the will of my inheritance to another family. And I sat with that for a while. I actually went back to Colombia and I thought about that decision and what he was meaning by that, what he might have been trying to say or do. And as much as I know my dad was in the construct and he really didn't have the wheel at that time, I know his heart. And I know he had the same servitude, the same giving heart, and he wanted to make a difference. And he found a deserving soul. And I believe she is deserving. And I came to peace with that decision that he made in a way that I wasn't a victim. And it shifted my perspective because over the last 10 years, I have been developing a foundation that came from the sale of a business where I wanted to create an impact. I wanted to create a bigger impact and a legacy. And so with that foundation, I wanted to support people who were in that end of life crisis, who wanted the support, because how I was taught from my mentor, teacher, best friend, as she went through her transition, is that there's a possibility of having that transition in peace and love and harmony, in connection with friends and family. And there's a way to even do that at home and have that be a beautiful assisted process. And in witnessing her teaching or in receiving her teaching, I started to understand the importance of legacy creation as you're going through that process. And when I was at Mountains of Hope with Mike, many of the patients who were coming through had that same intuition that they wanted to leave a legacy. And so I've really been in the life planning and legacy creation work and creating my own legacy. And when my dad made that decision, I made the decision that I was going to do it differently. And I was going to look at how I was creating funding structures in the past, which I knew I was creating a family fund that would be able to support people at that time, but I didn't know how to expand it. And I also didn't understand the infrastructure that was underneath it. And it was a linear infrastructure. It came from the industrial age of drain. It does come from playing in the stock world. It does come from taking my fair share and looking at my own capital gain. And in the last 10 years, I've said I don't want to operate in that class. I have noticed that it's a classism issue. And that there's certain mechanics under my funding that are of a certain class. And so by shifting my identity, I'm actually shifting my class and finding where I'm more aligned in the space of reciprocity, in the space of open hearts and compassion and giving, loving service, and knowing that when I open that fund, that it is regenerative. And at the core of who I am, I build regenerative models. And I stand for that. And I'm holding hope and space for that impact.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's where, to me, I resonate with both you and Mike, is that you're authentically living it. You're not just talking about it. A lot of people, they write books on it, they get TED Talks on it. But then if you look at their actual impact beyond the actual speaking and book sales, they're not having much of an impact on other people's lives. Because we've been taught in our culture that things are performative, that you talk about service and you teach about service, but how often you actually doing service, and particularly how do you choose to do service at a time when your shadow self is there, your ego is there, you're in the middle of your thunderstorm, and the way we've been conditioned and programmed is to always think about ourselves in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think that's when the change happens, when you can still choose servant leadership and thinking about others in love in those moments, I think that's when love becomes even more emboldened in you, and you grow, your vibration grows stronger, not just higher, stronger, to the point where you actually change and your identity shifts as a result of that. And you talked about the multiple ways you shifted in your identity. And Mike, I've seen that, to me, in reading your book and then listening to you share your stories, I've seen how your identity has shifted as well. And that's the language I use. When I say shifted, I mean, like, for example, if you're an alcoholic, the world labels you an alcoholic. They say, based on these characteristics and these behaviors, you're an alcoholic. And that becomes your identity. Because all alcoholics can be summed up based on these characteristics, how they behave. But when you hit rock bottom and you choose, I'm no longer going to be an alcoholic anymore, that's changed the identity. Because you're saying that what I've done thus far, utilizing this identity, can no longer work for me in the direction I want to go in the future. And I've learned that the best way out of that funk is service. Like, I really believe that the only reason most people, at least for me, speaking for myself, each time that I've been depressed, worried, anxiety, is because I can't solve my problem. And when I want to change that state from thinking about lack, it's going to solve somebody else's problem. And that puts me right back in our natural position as problem solvers. Like, because when someone prays for something, it's not going to just magically pop out the sky. It's going to be another human that comes in the form of that prayer, that answered prayer, that service. And so now I want to throw this question to both of you all. Where would you say in your own personal lives you've experienced someone else showing you that level of love and service where it really helped you at a moment and when you really needed that and it felt like an answered prayer?
Well, for me, go ahead, Jess, go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to one right now because you asked about Rachel and Goddess Tears and how the Deserving Soul Fund is created. And I witnessed that in her. I witnessed that time when she was at her rock bottom. She had zero lifeline left in her, and she knew that she wanted her legacy to be created and offered to the world. So like in that deepest moment when you're just in the corner and up against the wall and you have no other choice, and the choice you make is to be of service to others, it's a beautiful opening and a blossoming. It's like a surrendering. And we've witnessed that with her several times, which is why I have chosen to redirect my funding into her regenerative fund, and the fund that is supporting her with the Fully Human campaign or the Fully Human movement. And I can see that for Rachel being that person, that it also is the same for me, because it was when my father passed that I went to be with Rachel to support her inside of her stage 5 prognosis that she moved beautifully through. But in the moment, she did it through serving me. She offered me a soft place to land and really nutritious food to eat and a puppy dog to snuggle. And we were in it together. And so I think that's the beauty of this community, where we are like so tightly, quantumly entangled, that we open up our hearts to the point of opening up our hands and our homes to each other. And that's the type of servants that we are. And I'm
No, I was going to say that's beautiful. And I was thinking about knowing the history of what led up to that, and knowing what Rachel was when I first met her, to seeing where Rachel is now, and knowing the impact you've had in her life and the impact she has in our life. That's the secret, really. That's why I believe that love is the secret ingredient, so to speak. It's obvious and it's not obvious. It's obvious that it's love. It's not obvious that when it's time to apply it. And when you apply love and you are a servant leader, it not only changes them, it changes you. That's a quantum entanglement that you speak of.
Yeah.
And I know that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I did. I witnessed that with Rachel, because when she was on her way to Mountains of Hope, she was saying, or her story was at that time, she was going to have a really hard time receiving. And so I know that this is like a full reciprocity circle because Mike was the one who opened himself up to create legacy and to be of service when he was also in the storm. Yeah, sorry for interrupting you, but I was like, that was it.
No, this is a free flow. There's no hierarchy in this matter. It's just we actually having conversations. And Mike, your name constantly keeps coming up, and I think that's important because I remember being in Mountains of Hope. Here's I say the little things you notice when you allow your heart to be open. Now, I'm a dog owner. Not currently, but I've been a dog owner, and I've had dogs throughout my years, and I've learned how to train a dog. I know how difficult it is to train a dog to walk with you. Like people take it for granted when people walking their dogs and dogs are directly next to them, and they're not bothered by all the scents and smells and sounds. They're just looking at their owner and that trust. That's difficult to get that dog there. That takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of training. And so I'm at Mountains of Hope. And I remember folks were saying, well, there's some steps up here. You can walk up these steps and kind of walk around the property. And you have these dogs that are just there, stay on the property. And Julian told me the dog comes and he walks with you the entire. I'm like, I couldn't get my dog to do that if I could have a bag full of treats and I'm teasing, offering those, and he would not walk next to me. This dog is walking next to me the entire length of the property. It's something spiritual about that. That's not just a nice little tidbit or a fact. There's something magical happening, something cosmically connecting happening. I just want to see what your thoughts on that, Mike, because you even have the animals feeling gratitude.
Well, I think I think Mountains of Hope, we're located 7,000 feet in the wonderful, beautiful Andes Mountains, and we're very close to the equator. So that creates a magical, energetic, vibrational frequency in itself, right? The beauty of this place. And I think from the trees to the flowers to the produce that we grow to the hens that lay the eggs to the dogs that walk around with the guests. It's just such a peaceful, tranquil, healing environment that I think anything that's alive is going to pick up on it. And that's why everything is so green and lush. It's just energy. Everything is energy, right? And so we have this profound weather here and this profound vibrational energy and the beauty, as I say occasionally that, we don't thrive in nature. We are nature. And I think by being here and being in this nature and being around loving animals and being around loving people and being around peaceful trees and nature, that we connect to source. And when we're connected to source, we're remembering who we really are, which is eternal timeless consciousness, that we're not a bunch of 50 trillion cells working together, create a human body for my spirit to live in. No, it's all entwined. It's all oneness, and it's all beautiful. And I think that's what happens here at Mountains Hope. You remember that. Doesn't mean that life still isn't difficult. Doesn't mean that we still don't have the challenges and things to overcome in our life. But it's the reconnecting to source, and I think that's where we can heal from anything and find great purpose. You asked earlier, has anybody ever done stuff for me, to help me propel my life? And so I'll never forget, it's actually 46 years ago this month that I went to my first 12-step meeting for myself. And I got the hang of it and stayed sober for about 18 months. And then I was in so much emotional pain from guilt and regret and so much suffering from grief and loss from my childhood and my walking out on my wife and my 2-month-old daughter that I couldn't stay off the drugs and the alcohol. And then some guy, a friend of mine in the program says, hey, listen, I've never met anybody as messed up as you, but I might know somebody that can help you. And that led to an introduction to Doug Fitzgerald, who I called the mystery man in my first book, Love Unfiltered, and now what we call the creation frequency. But those two, that introduction changed everything about my life. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would probably be in not an institution for mental health or an institution for criminals or dead. I mean, if it hadn't have been for that introduction. So we always have to be receptive. Now, why did I get that introduction? Well, I believe it's because I came here to do something, to learn something, and that was part of my journey. But I had to take the action, and that's the thing people have to realize. You can manifest the greatest plan in the world, okay? And if you don't get off your couch and do something, it's never going to come into fruition. We have to take action. So this guy was kind enough, a friend of mine, to say, "Hey, might know somebody that can help you." But I took the action to go work with him for 7 weeks, pay him $50 a week but that changed everything in my life and continues to do to this day. So it's important that we're open to these opportunities. But the only way we're open to these opportunities, we have to be present in the moment, and we have to have self-awareness. Okay. Because I knew most people might say, "Hey, screw you. I don't have any problems. What about your problems?" Okay. No, I said, "Yeah, I could use some help." And so I go and explore that. And I think that's, humility, the power of humility, saying, "Hey, I could use some help right now. And let's see who shows up." That's why when I teach people to journal, ask for help, ask for wisdom. It's right here. All we got to do is ask, and it shall be given unto you. And then life is not as difficult as it needs to be.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things I've wrestled with, not as much anymore, thank God. And I'm sure I still will maybe down the road when I get triggered, but it's really understanding and controlling that voice in my head, that voice that people think is them, and they act on it just because their voice says act on it, and being able to be the observer and realize, no, I'm not that voice. That's just an idea that popped in my head. I don't have to act on that idea. And Jess, I've seen you act on ideas of love and being present at times that are challenging for you, that you may be dealing with a brother who's going through pain, or a mother who's going through pain, or a father who went through pain and caused pain, or a divorce, and all these things that you've gone through since I've known your journey. Yet still, we're in these different meetings, different conversations, listening to other people's pains. So my question for you now in the context of, if you're looking at the mirror analogy, because we look at that mirror and we think that reflection, and see, that's what people got to realize. Look at the mirror and think that reflection is you. There's no more you than that voice is you.
Right.
How do you hear that voice that tells you that you should be selfish, you should be worried about you don't have time to be listening to this person tell you about their problems, you got your own problems, get off this call or reschedule this call? How do you know that voice and lean into the voice that says, no, let me be here, be present, and truly be seeking to understand before being understood?
Yeah, I know I talked about it a little bit on a previous podcast when I talked about my mental health journey and finding my way into the crazy institution that I was trying to avoid. So what was the mental loop in my mind at that time was that I couldn't go crazy. I needed to hold on to control. I needed to control a lot of things to not be crazy, but that made me crazier. It's like the Chinese finger trap. But it was when I was in there that I looked in the eyes of others, and others made space for me. So much space was created for me to finally be heard and seen and self-expressed, and like to be met where I am in my humanity, not in an identity, but just like, holy shit, we're human. Amen. Like, let's just be real about it for a minute. This is a rough ride, and we've gone through a lot to evolve our consciousness to where we are now. And so to give a little grace and just to open up and be held, and to have an option to just like lay on the floor and be like, we're not, I mean, we're crazy, but we're not crazy. We're all kind of like special crazy. And I just made so much of it that that was kind of where I stopped and started seeing the importance of me shutting up so that I could do the same for others. And I've noticed that that's the most important thing I can do, is to be receptive and open and listening. And then from that space, I can attune. And I can say there's also one special boy that I had as a student that I was working with, who taught me a lot because he was unable to be with other people without being aggressive toward them when things didn't go his way. So no one wanted to be with him because it was just an unsafe environment. So we would spend a lot of time regulating, and I found through observing him that we have an energy body, and it can get low and it can get reactive when it's out of sync. And what can happen in that is we create distortions and cancer and illness and all these other things. But from a 7-year-old point of view, it was really easy to watch him come into sync with everything when he was in nature, and that would kind of put him at center. And then he could go back and be with people and not be aggressive because he could distinguish between his own energy and the energy of others and not be so affected and start protecting his energy. And it was in that observation and noticing that I began regulating myself. And that is the only way I can sit and hold my own energy, is when I'm coming in fully regulated. And I talked about that prior to this podcast before we went live, is that I just came in from outside. So a lot of the practice is making sure that my energy is completely centered and whole before I enter a space with others.
That regenerative rhythm that you're building is key. And I know that, like I said, within myself, I remember getting up at Mountains of Hope, and the first thing to do, the option there is to go take yoga. But before I go to yoga, I walk past and I'm offered my smoothie or juice drink, freshly made for me right there before I go into yoga. And of course, I'm loving that, because at home, that means I have to go make that. And having to put that time and effort into making that and attending yoga, those two things are different to add to your schedule. One of those things eventually you're not going to do is consistent. If you're not going to make your juice, or you're not going to go to yoga, but as you continue to do things more. So I had the opportunity, and that's what I really loved about Mountains of Hope from a healing standpoint. I was able not to think about those things that I needed for my body, because you had created programs there. The protocols were there for me to just go through that and experience that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kept me regulate, right? And I remember just even watching you one day walk through the labyrinth by yourself. And I'm saying to myself, why is she walking through by herself? Why is she walking through the labyrinth as opposed to where is someone else? Just asking myself those questions, just observing things. And one last thing I wanted to share as well that I observed was that, Mike, when you did your coherent healing ceremonies, and how, unbeknownst to me, that everyone that was there was excited about participating. It was like this energy of excitement, enthusiasm that it was coming up in the hour, and how that affected everybody that worked there as people are talking about it. And then they're going there to participate. Not one person that I ever hear, oh, Mike's doing one of those coherent ceremonies, I'm not going to go with that today. Not one person that I hear say that statement. Everybody was eager. And so, of course, it's infectious when you see that. Now I'm eager. Now I have to go there with that same seriousness and intensity and presence like everyone else. And I realized that's required to make that coherent energy be felt. And then the participant that everybody's there holding hands on, that's receiving energy, has to be that intentionality of everybody thinking the same thing, that I want this in my heart. So, Mike, I know you talked about it before, but this may be some new audience members that have never heard it before. Talk about the coherence healing, and then more importantly, what I want to know is, how do you feel as a result of after that happens?
Well, for me, it's just an absolute joy to be able to be a part of, somewhat lead it and experience it. Because the joy for me comes from, we basically have a healee. That's one person. And that person we lay gently on cushions in the middle of the room, and put blankets over them and eye shades. And their only intention is to stay in their heart the best they can, and try to stay out of the head and where the crazy thoughts live, and stay in their heart and just be ready to receive, like we were talking about earlier. But for me, the magic and the mystical is to see these people here in Colombia, from the guys that grow the vegetables, or the guys that cut the grass, or the guy that cleans the pool, or the guy that washes the dishes or cooks the meals, to see them all show up, excited to be there, and to experience this. And because I think what they're learning is that when we help others heal, we heal a part of ourselves as well. And I think that's what all the team members here at Mountains of Hope are realizing, that, hey, when people come here that are struggling with a health issue, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, and they transform and they heal, so do we. So does the property. So does the environment. So I think that's what's got me most excited, is to see these people that you're not going to get exposed to anything like this in all of Colombia,
Right.
unless you're at a Joe Dispenza workshop, and you're not going to get exposed to this very place in America. Maybe in certain churches, they do this kind of laying of the hands and the healing coherent ceremony things. But for me, and then of course for me to lead the guided meditation and not having a clue what's going to come out of my mouth, and just go with the flow and go with the spirit, and then to experience that, because there's no formula. It's just pure spirit. It's pure desire to love someone that's struggling with something, and talk about getting out of yourself. Okay. I mean, for those 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, I'm totally out of myself. So my body's healing itself. And then I'm surrounded by all this positive love and energy and powerful intention to pour our healing, loving energy into this person that needs it. Well, guess what? All of us are healing simultaneously. And so it's probably my favorite thing to do here. And it's a blessing, honestly.
And I can say, from being in those circles and offering prayer to those circles, there have been many whispers in my ear to tell me that what came through your channel was exactly what they needed to receive.
Yeah. Amen.
And I want to add that I've seen so many, not in person, but definitely on TV, examples of people going through different healing ceremonies, and so-called prophets or pastors or teachers or gurus are laying hands on them. And I've always had that skeptical belief, like, that's not true. That's just a scam. And I never had the facts to back it up. That was my initial thought that came to my mind. So I never really put a lot of stock in it. What really has shown me a different take on it is looking at how you did it. And it's not just your process, Mike. It was the fact that you are authentically doing it in real life beyond the coherent circle. So you're impacting people's lives. You are truly a person, as you said, that I haven't felt any kind of racist vibe on you, or that you felt you were different or superior. I never felt a class vibe from you, that you felt that you were better because you have more financial resources. I never felt any of that energy from you. So when you're doing a coherent ceremony, I can feel your authenticity through that. And that's going to resonate with everybody else. Where I see a lot of other people, they have their shadow selves. So their intent may be there to be coherent. But if you're not coherent in your life, then that's not going to be able to be transferred, whether the person accepts it or not, maybe like a placebo in those people's eyes. And that's why I think it's not sustainable. But what I wanted to shift back to is this, because I think this is important. I want to make sure we really cover this, is that, and being a part of the conscious capitalism movement, I've been a part of all kind of conversations, triple bottom line, EGA, environmental governments, or EGS standards, all these different acronyms and ways of how to deal and process money differently in a more holistic, caring manner. And what I've always seen is that at the end of the day, no matter what the intent was in creating that movement, nonprofit, but then they apply the same financial metrics to who they give the money to. So if you're still going to say, well, we're going to use this money to be impactful, but the recipients of this money have to have the financial wherewithal, the credit wherewithal, the business experience, then you haven't really created anything new. You just created a different way, or your criteria for how you deploy capital. And you all both have allowed your heart to be what propelled you to want to give help to somebody financially or even your time. And sometimes that may feel like in the moment, at least for me, that when you do that for the wrong people, you don't feel as though they were grateful for it. And it may feel like it was a waste of time and money and effort.
Yep.
But I've learned that it's never really a waste. It's just about realigning who gets that to make it regenerative. And for me, that's creating what I call the soul-led economy, where your soul, not your heart, but your soul guides you in the direction of how you use your capital for the most impactful way.
Yeah.
And I have a song I've written about that, and I want to take a musical break. It's called The Soul-Led Economy, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and I want to continue to build on the other side of this, how you all are, in my opinion, implementing the soul-led economy. As you hear the lyrics, you'll see what I mean by that as well.
All right, let's do it.
This is not music. This is the soundtrack for the fully human movement. My intent is freedom. This is my frequency signal, King. This is not a theory. This is the law of the emerging soul. Every system has a currency. Ours is love. We don't start with a contract, we start with a seed. Identifying the frequency of another in need, a deserving soul. Standing in the storm, we reach out our hand and let the energy transform. Yeah, we rise them above the static and the strife, restoring the ancient rhythm of a fully human life. It's a spark in the marrow, a call to the deep, awakening the sovereign king from his construct sleep. This is not charity, this is strategy and grace. Love as the engine, service as the pace. The soul-led economy, built on the power of love, identifying a deserving soul and rising them above, vibrating higher. Let the energy touch the soul, radiating through the heart to take full control. From the soul to the heart, to the servant in the mind, leaving the drainage of the old world behind. Vibrating higher, vibrating higher. Yeah. The deserving soul now finds the pace to lift up another with dignity and grace. A chain reaction in the quantum field, where the wounds of the separator finally heal. The higher purpose, a generated flow, watching the love energy tribe start to grow. It's the law of service, the 33 gate. We don't ask for permission, we just create our fate. 500 hertz, the current, not the goal, the living, breathing signal of the sovereign soul. This is not capitalism, this is not socialism, this is not communism, this is not anyism, this is paradigm dissolution, the construct breaking down. This is human emergent sovereign souls reclaiming ground. This is a spiritual awakening of souls united, bringing their money together, the signal ignited. Our energy is oneness, our energy is growth. For love and for liberation we take the sacred oath. A spiritual economy, the currency of light, ending the separation, ending the night. One. Business is a spiritual experience. Love is the motivator. 2. Don't shrink or play small. Walk in your power. 3. Dare to love and the numbers will follow. 4. Leadership is a sacred responsibility. 5. Management is an art. Grace and elegance. 6. Empower with ownership. Watch the ROI grow. 7. Transcend to the higher level. No politics, no bullshit. 8. Don't take it all so seriously. Liberate your potential. 9. Count your blessings, build on gratitude. 10. The truth will set you free. Elevate the journey. Gratitude to Michael Hendricks. Soul-led economy, built on the power of love. Identifying a deserving soul and rising them above. Let the energy touch the soul, radiating through the heart to take full control. From the soul to the heart, to the servant in the mind, leaving the drainage of the old world behind. From the dream to the plan, from the plan to the movement, my intent is your increase. I am a valuable connection. I am the architect. The solid economy. 500 hertz. Are you receiving my signal? Are you picking up?
Nice.
All right. I'm picking up.
Thank you all for listening. So with you all being two of the people who really helped put in the model of how the solar economy looks and operates, I want to get your thoughts on the song and how do you see giving or investing or just financial prudence going forward in this context?
For myself, I can see that I've shifted from a linear model to a regenerative model in every aspect. And even as Mike shares his story about Mountains of Hope, what I know is at the source of that seed that was planted there is a regenerative garden. And I know when we sit in a coherent healing ceremony, we're regenerating our energy system. And there's so much that I'm seeing now that can be full circle, full reciprocity. I give, I receive. There's no more self-sacrifice. There's no more sacrificing ourselves for others. There's like a sovereign opportunity to pour in, lift each other up, pour in, lift each other up. And this torus of energy we can create in community, we can create it individually, and we can create it for the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought the words were very, very powerful. I'm just not sure how to get people on the movement where they realize that the real path to fulfillment and joy and happiness is serving others with no motive, no agenda, not for attention, not for arrogance, not for ego, not for a tax deduction, not to be able to do a press release. It's to just help people. And this is what I think was so beautiful from the Love for Margot Foundation. Now, I failed miserably as a nonprofit person. I feel that the nonprofit world is worse than the for-profit world. But nevertheless, one thing that was very pure about the Love for Margot Foundation is no one earned a salary. No one got, it was all donated time. And at least on my part, and I may have failed at raising money, but I know that the people that we helped was a tremendous gift to them. We just weren't getting the return on investment that I felt like, we would give $5,000 grant to an individual, which is what they desperately needed, right? They're below the poverty line to begin with. Now they can't work because of their cancer diagnosis. Now their expenses have gone up because they have to drive back and forth to the doctor or take a bus, try to eat better and all that kind of stuff. So we would give them something that was very sustainable and helpful called money, okay? And very few charities do that. But for example, I'm helping an elderly 83-year-old woman here that's terrible Alzheimer's and couldn't get anyone to take care of her. So we're paying for her to go to a place to get good care. This is the kind of charity that we need to do for one another, not donate to the American Cancer Society or the pink ribbon people. No, we need to find people. They're right there in your neighborhood. They're right there in your community that could really use, whether it's just someone to listen to them or someone to give them a meal or someone to drive them to the doctor or someone just to be present with them. There is pain and suffering all around you. And if we can find it, if we could just, I believe this so strongly in every part of my being, that if everybody would just lift up someone less fortunate themselves, this entire consciousness of duality and the evil overwhelming the place would collapse, and we would find ourselves again. But how do we get there? We're so divided and conquered right now. We're so consumed with our 15 minutes of fame on Instagram, or we're so consumed with getting a new car or a new outfit or a new purse. I mean, so until we get back to who we really are as humanity, and we realize that we're one, and that by supporting each other, that we find personal freedom and we find joy and we find purpose, and we're free. And until we wake up to that reality, and that will come again, because tough times always create that kind of situation. And I think we're headed for some tough times in the near future. And again, it's going to be like people are going to have to step up and really be strong, and that will create another going forward in a new consciousness, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure we need to convince anyone. I think that the opportunity is for us to step into it as leaders and, blaze a trail of what's possible through our own visions and our own actions. And I feel the energy of the movement of becoming more fully human, and others who are feeling that call as well to, if I were to put this in real terms of an example, I'm walking down the street today and I see an individual who is unhomed and they're sitting on the sidewalk. My initial construct thought is they need money. Do I have cash? Do I have anything I can give them? That's my initial thought. And I've really transferred that now to be like, I don't want to be in that model. I don't want to be in that class. I don't want to be in the rescuer, the charity like that. What I'd rather do is sit down and be present and say, I don't have material things to offer, but what I have is my time and my attention, and be able to find some relatedness and resonance together. Because even Rachel said yesterday that this funding is not about a charity in giving away and having it be another model of siphoning funds. It's actually a message of love and one of reciprocity and one of supporting each other. And so it may be a phone call. It may be a connection. It may be somebody creating just time and space, exactly what you said, Mike. Of like, that's our charitable ways can be much more than material and money.
And let me add this to the perspective. I think I hold space for both. And I think that you are both been doing both. And I think the movement is growing slowly in the context that it's not meant to grow fast. I think it's meant to grow because we have to be authentic with it. And if the masses were to do it, the masses wouldn't be authentic. I believe you have to go through a certain amount of wreckage in order for you to be able to see how best to give and not let your ego get in the way. I think a lot of people let their egos consume them and think it's about them. And once you've been wrecked, you've been humble enough to realize it's not about me, it's about who I can help. Let me give you an example of what I mean. 2 weeks ago, I went to get some food. I went to a place in the mall and I got some food. And I didn't check my bag. And I said I was going to walk after I ate. And I got home and I was about to eat and I realized they gave me the wrong order. So I had to drive back up to the mall, which is a 15, 20-minute time by the time you park, walk back to the place. And I did that because I'm mad. They gave me the wrong order. And so I went there with the energy of, let me tell them how wrong they were, give me the wrong order. And I'm bringing that kind of energy. And the guy said, well, sir, yeah, we were looking for it. That was our mistake. He said, well, I tell you what, you want a lemonade while we get you a new order? And I had already worked in my mind how I was going to argue with them to say, no, I don't want the same food you had waiting on me 15 minutes ago. I want new food. I want this. I want that. And he offered me a lemonade, a large size lemonade. And then he told me, I tell you what, you can even keep the food that you brought back because we don't need it. We're just going to throw it away. And I said, oh, okay, well, in that case, it changed my whole state. And I thought about it. So what can I do with this extra food? I'm not going to eat all this food. And so I knew there's homeless people in my community at certain locations. And I said, well, I'm going to drive it off and see if this homeless person's there, and I'm going to offer it to him. But then my voice in my head said, well, no, it's going to rain soon. If you take the food to him, you won't be able to walk because it's going to rain. So you're going to miss out on your walk. I said, well, no, I'm just going to do it anyway. And I don't know if he's going to be there. And I did it. And the guy was there. I gave him the food. He was very recipient of it because I'm giving him fresh, hot food with utensils and everything. And I left. I didn't stand there for him to give me any kind of thank you. I just gave him the food and left. And of course, when I did walk, it poured. It stormed. I got caught in that storm. And that storm was refreshing. And what I'm saying is, I did that knowing that I would still have to be inconvenienced and go through the unpleasant, at that time, I thought, experience of walking in the rain, but the rain was healing. It was a rain that I experienced when I was at Mountains of Hope, when I was going through my ceremony. I was out in the rain as well. So it took me back to that. And I say all that to say this, is that I believe we're doing that. I believe every time we have a conversation and we make the decision to hop on this phone call or this Zoom call or this podcast and continue to build, when we have other things we can be doing with our time. Like Mike, right now, you're in Colombia. You're in a beautiful place where you got an infinity pool and a hot tub you can be in right now, literally. And you right now in your studio talking about how you can love other people better. So you have these options. So to me, you're leaning into that. You're doing that. And I don't liken us to Jesus or biblically, but it started off with Jesus was with just 12 disciples, right? It takes a small number of people to say, we're going to be the ones that impact the change. And then just showing up every day, being authentic, because that's what the world, I believe, needs more than anything right now is authenticity. Because there's so much information out there that's been pumped to people every single day through the algorithms, through social media, through the mainstream media. And people are so tired of people saying, here's what I'm doing, but doing something different, that they can't even distinguish what's true and what's not true. But they can feel it. And that's what I've seen with Mountains of Hope. That's what I've seen with you all over time. We felt it. I've watched Rachel, like I said, emerge. I watched myself emerge. I watched Jess emerge. I watched you emerge, Mike, over these last 6 months. So I've truly seen human emergence of people showing up through difficult challenges, whether it's risking death and health crisis, financial crisis, emotional crisis, and still showing up, still giving, still serving. That to me is the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, and we look at 6 months from now, I think we're going to be much more impactful than we are today. But it's these small steps of getting up today, still committing to it, breathing one breath at a time, intentionality, and that's the creation frequency, to use your words, Mike, that I believe we're bringing to the world. That's my take. I believe it's a combination of both what you said instead of either or.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think of how all of us in the last 6 months have really been through a storm. And, when I look, I've been in the psychological field my whole career. So I'm very weary about trauma bonding, knowing that we're all going through some deep traumas, which are releasing or have released. And there's a lot that has shifted and changed since we came into our relationship together at Mountains of Hope. And I can confidently say that the trauma is releasing, not only from the patients, but from us. And there's this like digestion. And when I speak of regeneration and the garden being at the center, there is a regeneration happening from that activation, where it's okay. It's like okay to have a storm. It can even feel good. It could even be refreshing. It could even be joyous, but actually meeting each other there is a beautiful place. We've talked a little bit about building from the bottom. And that's the opportunity that we have now, even as a collective, seeing all the war and division and cancer that is on the planet and knowing we're at a turning point and love wins and we have huge opportunities moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we're gonna get there. We're getting there at the end of our show, and I want to give each of us a closing thought that we want to share, leave with our listening audience. It could be a quote, a poem, or whatever you have on your heart that you want to put out into our listening audience, for our listening audience.
Yeah, my hope, my prayer is that that for myself is that I continue to be regenerative, keep looking at myself and what I can do to impact 7 generations forward and 7 generations back, that I do my part to be a good steward, and in that I open spaces for others to do the same.
Yeah, and for me, I'm really focused on taking care of myself first, loving myself first, because without that, you're gonna fall flat on your face and you're gonna let people down. And so that's pretty much what happened to me. So now, for me, the hard thing is to carving out time for myself, not saying yes to everything and everybody that shows up in my life, so having some boundaries, um, and creating my own little bubble where I can stay in and control what goes in and out of here, control the feelings, and control my physical health. Because without that, we're going to stumble and we're going to fall and we're not going to become the best version of ourselves. So that's really where my focus is right now. It's a new concept for me to put myself first and to really put boundaries and take care of myself first. But it's the only way I can do this work. And so, and it's starting to feel good, and I'm starting to excel physically, get better sleep, have more energy. And that's the secret to this thing, is to get out of ourselves and to take care of ourselves, and then get out of ourselves and serve others. And then you find total freedom.
Yeah. Let's put that on blast, that service is not self-sacrifice.
There you go. There you go. It's
Absolutely.
actually it's a blessing. This is the greatest blessing you can ever experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to you all's point, I've changed my way I look at self-service and take care of myself in the context that now that I believe I have a higher purpose to at least plant the seeds for the fully human movement and put them out there. But in order for me to do that sustainably, I must have my regenerative rhythm. I must breathe. I must eat the right foods. I must meditate. I must sleep. Because if I don't do those things, then I can't show up here 100%. And this movement can't be built off marketing. We can't market love. It has to be felt. It has to be resonated. And people have to see authenticity. And everybody looks at everything we're going to say when we talk about love. Initially, the way people's minds been programmed, oh, they're full of shit. Some other people I heard talking about love is all these other people I heard talking about love. They don't really mean love at the end of the day. But we have to be willing to let that go, show up every day, be present, and that regenerative regulation that we do, as you talked about, Mike, and I know you practice, Jess, and helping me understand how to do it within my own life. That's what keeps me focused and showing up. If I don't walk in the morning, if I don't do my breath work, if I don't say my gratitude prayers, I'm not going to come here and be a 10. I'm going to come here and be whatever the day has set for me, and I'm reacting to that day. Then I bring the energy to the call. And that is not going to be transformative or helpful to anybody. And so that's the path we all, I believe, are sharing. And I believe that's the journey we all are on. And I thank you all for being on this journey with me, leaning in and investing the time and energy and the money to make this, what we're building, really manifest. So I want to give gratitude to you all both for doing that.
Thank you.
Con mucho gusto.
And I want to give gratitude to our listening audience as we get ready to wrap up today's show. Thank you all for listening, whether you're listening in person, live, or whether you're listening to a replay. Find in your heart a way to be growth-minded. And as Jess has said, look for ways to become more fully human. Until next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, let's become more fully human. Thank you all.
Race is a lie, a ghost in the machine, a veil over the eye. Race is a lie, a script for the managed, a reason to die. It's the dementia, the spirit, it's the glitch in the code. It's the heavy, heavy baggage on a sovereign road. solve the construct. Yeah, yeah. It started as a lie, a whisper in the dark, designed to keep the brothers from finding the spark. Father is a soul whose sovereign operating system was no longer whole. He didn't pull that trigger from his fully human place. The construct had the wheel, the construct ran the race. So stop